Hello everyone, this is Fadi, and thank you so much for joining us again in this video series about the Qira'at of the Quran, and what Jay have called it the Qira'at Conundrum, what I like to call it maybe the Qira'at or Ahruf controversy, whatever you want to call it. We are dissecting all of the issues and the problems, and last week, or I should say last video, we talked about the 7th century issues with the Qira'at. Today we are going to focus on the 8th century Qira'at. Jay, welcome of course. Why are those 2 centuries important, the 7th century and 8th century?
Because this is where it all begins according to Islam. I don't believe it does. I believe we're going to find out in time that none of this is true. But because of the fact that once you start to redact it back from the 9th and 10th century, you're going to make an awful lot of errors. You're going to make an awful lot of historical mistakes. And that's what we're finding already with the 7th century in the last episode. The fact that they made all these claims and they can't even come up with one reference or one, it's all attributed. They've made all these claims about all these Qur'ans, Ubay bin Ka'b's Qur'an, Ibn Mas'ud's Qur'an, Ibn Musa's Qur'an, Zayd ibn Thabit's Qur'an. The 5 that were then finally from Ibn Thabit were sent to Mecca, Medina, Basra, Kufa, and Damascus. Not any of these Qur'ans existed at all. Not one that we can find. We can't find one complete Quran at all from any of these individuals from the 7th century. So now we're going to move to the 8th century, because now we get into this whole topic of the QIRA'AT Conundrum.
So basically you're doing a historical criticism.
This is what you have to do.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm saying, Muslims, you should have done this. Why is it we're doing it? Why is it we have to do it? Why is it you have to, you've had all these years to do so? You've had, well, we're talking about 1,300 years to do so, and you have yet to do it. And that's why it's a shame that we even have to go into this and have to remind them. But now we want to move into the 8th century. And so what I'd like to do is go back to the slides again, and let's start going on to the 8th century, because now we get into the Qira'at. And there you see, we start with Muhammad, who dies in 632. We now know, we've already gone through this, so I'm not doing anything you haven't already seen. And then you get to Uthman, who then introduces the 1 Quran. So from 632 of the 7 Qurans, it comes back to 1 Quran in 652, 20 years later. But hold on, where are these 7 ahrufs? Where are these 7 qira'ats, or these 7 ahrufs that Muhammad received? Well, we're told that 5 of them were actually created from 1 ahruf, 1 qira'at, and that's sent to 5 cities. But aren't there more dialects? Shabir keeps on talking about the ones that were actually destroyed, the ones that were burned by our good friend Uthman, were dialects. You destroy dialects. And he was trying to say these are recitations. No, these aren't recitations. You don't burn recitation. You don't, as we've said many times, you don't burn people's tongues. You don't burn their voices. You don't burn the orality. You burn text. You don't burn scripts. You burn manuscripts. You burn vellums, or you burn parchments and possibly papyrus, but not someone's voice. So I'd like to know where those ones that they burned. Well, we don't have them because they're burnt. Well, we do know that the Qurayshi did exist. Now, suddenly these qira'ats start to appear. And when do they appear? Well, let's look at the first one. There's the first one right up there. What's his name?
Ibn Amir.
Okay, and what is his date?
736. That's at least the date when he died.
That's the day he died. That is not in the 7th century. So when we introduce the first of the qira'at, the first derivation, the first of the dots and the vowels, and it's this guy right here, and I'll just pull him off the table that we have in front of us. Whoops, that falls off. You can hold him up, but there he is.
Yep, that's it.
Ibn Amir. So that's 736. That's the earliest. That is introduced in the, well, beginning of the 8th century, but well into the 8th century, 736, and it's certainly 100 years after Muhammad. So he did not live at the time of Muhammad, right?
Oh, absolutely. No.
He did not even do his work in the same century as Muhammad, right?
If he lived at the days of a time of Muhammad, he would have been over 140 years of age.
That's right. You can see that. So obviously this has nothing to do with the earliest 7. Right. Because those 7 that were given to Jibril, by Jibril to Muhammad, were there before he died in 632. This is 100 years later. And he's the earliest. He's the earliest. That's why I have him on the timeline. Who comes second? Well, you have Ibn Kathir, who comes second, and he's in Mecca. His date is 738. Who comes third? Well, Asim. And he is from Kufa. So his date is 745. Who comes fourth? Abu Amr from Basra, 770. Now we're getting towards the end of the 8th century. Then comes Hamza, 772. Again, towards the end of the 8th century. Then you have Nafi from Medina, 785, almost getting to the end of the of the 8th century. And then finally we move into the 9th century and we have Al-Qasai. So those are the original 7. I put them up there so you can see them in the order that of their dates that he died.
Right.
But there's the 7. Those are the 7, right?
Right.
And who chose those 7?
Ibn Mujahid.
Okay, and when... So let's look at Ibn Mujahid. What is his dates?
936.
Can you see? Look at the length between him and Muhammad.
It's really amazing, by the way, Jay, if you think about it. And I want our Muslim friends to hear me out here. Who decided which rasm, okay, is the appropriate rasm and which dialect is the appropriate dialect? Uthman, who, by the way, we don't have any single tradition that says the Prophet authorized them, right, with anything like that. And then we move on to the Qira'at, 300 years later. Who authorized Ibn Mujahid to choose which 7 are the inspired ones that are preserved in heaven?
Interestingly, Ibn Mujahid would also agree with you. These are not inspired or in heaven.
Right.
At least you have to give him credit. He would not say that these are inspired. He realized that there was a problem, and you're going to see how huge a problem is once we get to that. I don't want to destroy our fire for that, because that gets even more problematic. But what we do know is that he is the one that is given that authority to choose those 7. But those aren't the only authoritative one. There is some more. And
That's right.
And here is the first one. His name is Abu Ja'far, and he is from Medina. Then another one, Yaqub from Basra. Look at his dates, 821, so we're well into the 9th century. And finally, Khalaf from the mid-9th century. So now from 736 all the way up to 844, you have the official 10. That's the 10. 3 green, 7, 3
That's
green,
right.
Red.
And I hope people are noticing 5 from Kufa, 2 from Basra, 1 from Damascus, and then we only have 1 Mecca and 1 Medina.
And the ones, well, actually there's 3. Yeah, you have Abu Ja'far from Medina as well. So you have
sorry,
2 from Medina and 1 from Mecca. Right. So those are the ones we should have. Those 3 should be the only ones of the 10. 7 of them have already been refuted, destroyed, and burned by our good friend Uthman. So why in the world do they suddenly appear a century later?
That's right.
Who chose them? Well, let's look and see who the guy who chose them. This guy chose them. Al-Jazari, 1429. I can't even get him on the map. I have to put an arrow saying where he is. He can't even get on the timeline. He's so far to the right.
So here's what it means. First of all, Uthman, we were told that he finally controlled the readings and the text. Yet by the time of Ibn Mujahid, we find that that's not the case. We still have more qira'at, and he has to deal with the problem. We thought that Ibn Mujahid fixed the problem. A couple of hundred years later, we have Al-Jazari dealing with other problems.
He gives another 3 on top of that. Now
right.
there's the 10. And these are the 10 that Yasser Qadi talks about. These are the 10 that Shabir Ali talks about. These are the 10 that they keep on claiming are the creme de la creme, the best of the best. I've got that up there on the left. Yasser Qadi has made this very clear that these are the 10 that we now know are from the time of Muhammad. And they keep on saying these are the divine 10. These are the ones we go to. You can see there's a problem, however, because what name is missing? Or what 2 names are missing? There are 2 names. Hafs and
Warsh.
Hafs and Warsh.
The
Hafs
most
and
common
Warsh
ones
should be
today.
the 2 most common ones. Let me just hold them up here. If you could get the one underneath Ibn Amir. Ibn Amir is trying to hide Hafs there.
Well, Ibn Amir should have been the one, but
these are the 2 that we use today. These are the 2 that everybody uses today. This is what used by 90% of the Muslim world. This is used all across North Africa. Their names are not on this list, are they?
Not at all.
So when did these guys come to appear? Well, I'm going to show you what happened then. To begin with, Ibn Mujahid had enormous number of Qur'ans to choose from. And so he was given the responsibility to choose 2 narrators or 2 transmitters or 2 rawis from each one of these readers. So each reader he could choose 2. So what did he choose for Nafi? Well, he chose, I forgot about Abdul Malik. Why did I put him in there? Because you notice all this comes after Abdul Malik.
I'm telling you, Jay, the picture is starting to become more and more suspicious.
I'm sure I have an agenda here, but I'm going to keep coming back. I just want to flip in there. So let's go. So we have many more. So you have 2 from Nafi, you have Qalun, and you have Warsh. Qalun is from Medina. Is Warsh from Medina? No, he's not. He's actually from Egypt. Why? We'll get into that. Then we have Ibn Kathir. He has Al-Bazi. Look at his date, 864. And then you have Qunbul, 904. Now we're into the 10th century. 10th century. That's 250 years after Muhammad. Abu Amr has Al-Duri and he has Al-Susi. Again, these are 9th century. Ibn Amr has Hisham and Ibn Dakwan. Asim has Shuba, and there is Hafs. There comes Hafs, 796. Hamza has Khalaf and also Khalid, and then you have Al-Qasai. He has Al-Layth and Al-Duri again. Remember, Al-Duri is already up there with Abu Amr. He is also the same guy with Al-Qasai. He actually disagrees with himself and joins another reader, and actually
there
has
you go.
two different Qur'ans,
how can
the
this
same guy
read two different ways? It's amazing, isn't it?
That's why he died on the same year, because he's the same individual. See, why aren't Muslims talking about this? How can you disagree with yourself because you join another school and then you have a completely different Quran again? You can't do that unless, of course, you are trying to get popularity for yourself.
Either this, or maybe he wasn't looking at it the way our Muslim friends are looking at it. He thought it was just fun to learn, read it this way and learn to read it that way.
This or that. Up and on. You say potato, I say potato. You say tomato, I say tomato. It's much worse than that. We're not going to get into that. That'll be coming in another episode.
I think it's tomato.
I say it's tomato. Now we get to the other three, the ones in the red, and they each are given to as well by Al-Jazari in 1429, the 15th century. So these are not appointed until the 15th century, almost 800 years after Muhammad. You have Isa ibn Wardan, and you also have Ibn Jumaz for Abu Jafar. Then you have Ruwai and you have Raw for Yaqub, and then you have Ishaq and Idris. Look at his dates, 905. That is the 10th century. So late. But chosen even later than that, 1429. So those are the 30 now. I want you to visually see that, folks. Look at visually and memorize that, because that's where they all come on a timeline.
And here's what Jay is saying. You have 10 readings, 2 transmitters for each. That's where we get the 30.
That's where you get the 3. Now, I want to go and I want to show you there. Go back to that. There's Hafs and Warsh. Those I've circled in black because they are the ones that are the most important. They are not part of the readers. They are part of the transmitters. They are nothing more than narrators.
Right. It's almost like you write a book and next generation somebody transmits your book. You should get the credit, not that transmitter.
And what's even more devastating, both Warsh and Hafs are not from Mecca. Even though Warsh is there with Nafi in Medina, he's not from Medina, he's from Egypt. He should have been a Coptic. It should have been a Coptic text. So this is fascinating. It just gets, the more we scratch, the more we find. The more we find, the more we shine. The more we shine, the more they whine. Oh, how sublime. I've said this many times. There's a real problem for these narratives. These narratives have holes all the way through it. And this is just 2. Now, I want to look at Abdul Malik again, because I want to look at comparison. When you look at Abdul Malik, you can see everything we're showing on that graph there, everything you're showing is to the right of that graph. The reason why I'm doing that is because for this whole year, we've been talking about Abdul Malik seems to introduce everything. He's the one that introduces the Shahada. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, that there's only one God but God. Muhammad is a prophet, on the coins in 692. Right. He then puts them on the coins in 696, and then introduces them on the Dome of the Rock in 691 and 692, and he introduces them on the Caliphal protocols. So he's the one that introduces Muhammad, he's the one that introduces the Shahada, he is the one that also introduces the word Islam and the people called Muslims, and he is also the one that eradicates all of the images and replaces it with only script. Right. So once he now introduces the man, he then has to have the book. And you can see how the book then has to be created after him. Notice and see how many years after him that the books are finally introduced. So I'm going to come to another graph at another time and show you the dates. But just now, just so you get that visually, they all come after, at least they only begin to appear 40 years after Abdul Malik. And then they continue right up into the 10th century, chosen in the 10th century by Ibn Mujahid, and also in the 15th century by Al-Jazari. Now, I just want to show you this one thing here. This is something that Hatun made a number of years ago. This is a little bit out of date, but I still wanted you to go up to it because we need to update it. She put this up about 3 years ago and has allowed me to see it. This is her graph looking at the 5 cities. See the 5 cities there? You see Mecca, you see Medina, you see Basra, Kufa, and City, and there are all the narrators that come from all those 5 cities. Take a look at the little brown clouds that you see to the right, because every one of those brown clouds show you how many variants each one of those narrators have from this guy here, Hafs. This is the variants that that we need to look at. And you take a look and you will see.
And Hafs is important because he's the one that is used in today's Quran.
This is the Quran that we all use today. This is the one that we always hold up. This is the one that has become now the canonical text.
Right.
But every one of those clouds, just take a look. You can see Al-Bazi, 1,094 variants from Hafs. Coming on down, you can see, and it's almost too far away, Khalaf has 2,600 variants. Coming on down to Abu Al-Harith, he has over 5,000 variants. These are not insignificant. And we're not just talking about 2, 3, 4, 10, 20, 30. We're not even talking about hundreds. We're talking about thousands of differences. So much so that the team there in London have come up with, if you look up at the graph again, I just want to look at that slide again, 93,263 variants in just 23 of the Qurans they've looked at.
Right.
We haven't even had time yet to look. They haven't had time to even look at the 30 Qurans. So let's then continue. And what we now do is, where is the source for all this? And this is where I really wanted to go to. Where is the source for everything I've just been talking to you? Well, to understand that, we need to, let's go back to the slides again. There you can see Muhammad, he dies in 632. There's Uthman. He then creates the first Quran that is sent to the 5 cities. And there are the 30 Qira'at, okay? Let's put them all up there in green, red, and purple. Where is the source for all this? Well, the first one they always come up with is this guy right here, Ibn Ishaq. Ibn Ishaq is the first. Now take a look and see, he's in blue there. Look at his dates, 765. That is mid-8th century, okay? However, do we have Ibn Ishaq's material today?
We don't. We only have what his student, supposedly Ibn Hisham.
Not his student, but certainly someone who got it from one of his student, and his name is Ibn Hisham. Look at his dates, 833. What does Ibn Hisham do? He throws out what he doesn't like, only retains what he likes.
And he adds more.
And he has more, adds to it. So let's just get rid of Ibn Ishaq, okay? You can pretty well dispense with him because it's nothing more than attribution.
Right.
I would love to see Ibn Ishaq. I cannot find him. Nothing exists today. So do we have Ibn Hisham? Ibn Hisham is the earliest of these traditions. He dies in 833. You have Al-Waqidi, who dies in 835. Then you have Al-Bukhari, who dies in 870, followed by Sahih Muslim, Ibn Dawud, and then we have Al-Tabari. So those are the major players. I don't want to, there's others that come after that. There's Tirmidhi, I haven't put them up there, and there's others that come with tafsir after Al-Tabari. But those are the major players. Take a look at the blue and notice that they are all from the 9th and 10th century. Why is that significant? Because of this guy again, Abdul Malik. Look at Abdul Malik. He dies in 692. How many years are there when the Qira'at start to form? How many years are there between him and the Qira'at? 44 years when the first of the Qira'at form. 44 years. Why aren't Muslims telling us this?
I can make a case that it's possible that Ibn Amir at least started it earlier than the day he died, and that still brings him closer to Abdul Malik.
But it comes after, anything he has written comes after Abdul Malik.
Right.
What about the traditions? They're even further distance. They're 141 years later. 141 years. Can you then understand why these narratives have hold in it? People look at the timeline. Memorize that picture right there. Take a look in the distance that we're talking about. None of this is from the time of Muhammad. None of this is from the time of Uthman. They only begin to appear within 30 to 40 years after Abdul Malik. And as far as the traditions, where we get all the stories about these guys, where we get the stories about these Qira'at, they only begin to appear 140 years after Abdul Malik.
Well, 140 years after Abdul Malik, but 180 after Uthman, and almost 200 after Muhammad. I mean,
exactly.
It keeps adding up. 200
for Ibn Hisham, 240 for Al-Bukhari. And that's why Muslims, and I keep on telling people, look at a timeline, look at the dates. Don't keep telling me, don't keep referring back to the traditions. Stop referring to those traditions. I'm getting sick and tired of those traditions because they're too late. We would never use that if that were Christianity. If this was what we had for our tafsir, for our CIRA, for our hadith of Jesus Christ, can you imagine we would have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John wouldn't even begin to appear to the 3rd century?
That's right.
How would we defend Jesus Christ? How would we defend what he did? How would we defend what he said if we only had 200 years difference between that? Or in this case, 240 years. So Muslims need to answer these questions. This is part of the holes, the narratives that have holes in it. This is what Yasir Qadhi was talking about.
So Yasir Qadhi wasn't kidding when he mentioned it. He knows, obviously, these things, or at least some of these things. He himself said that he has a crisis of faith, but then later crisis of knowledge, whatever he wants to call it. But all that to say, everybody can see now Is there a real crisis here? Absolutely. Are there holes in the narrative? You can see it. You be the judge.
This is crisis of knowledge that leads to a crisis of faith.
Absolutely.
And for Muslims who are watching us right now, when you look at that timeline and you walk away and say, if it's this late, then how in the world can we trust anything we have heard about concerning not only Muhammad, not only what he said, not only what he did, where he lived, what he received, even the people amongst whom he was supposed to be a part of, and the man that he called himself as a Muslim. All of this is pretty much going out the window. Once you put it on a timeline, you can see this is hugely, hugely significant. It is much too late even to be believable.
That is absolutely true, and this is why initially I was so excited to see Muhammad Hijab ask the right questions, Yasir Qadhi gives the right answers, but then all of a sudden they both end up deleting.
They had to delete it. Can you see? Put yourself in their place. What would you do to defend this? How can you defend this? Thank God we don't have this problem with the Bible. Thank God we don't have this problem with who Jesus is. We know who he is. We know what he did. We know what he said. We knew where he was born. We knew where he died. The city where he died, Jerusalem, if we could not even support a reference for a place called Jerusalem until the 4th century, remember, you can't find any reference for the place of Mecca where Muhammad supposedly was born and grew up until 741. And yet he died there supposedly just north of there in 632. And yet he lived there till 622. There is no reference for any city called Mecca for another 100 years. Thank God we don't have this problem with Jesus Christ.
Amen. Amen. And my hope really is that Yasir Qadhi, Muhammad Hijab, and others like them, along with all the Muslims who are watching this, we appeal to you to come to Christ. It's obvious that the book that you believe in is not a reliable book, a book that is having the hallmarks of the work of man throughout its history. It is a man that supposedly said received the revelation in a cave without eyewitness that says it was revealed to him. It was a man who decided that it needs to be collected. It's a man that decided that which dialect needs to be used. And it's a man later on that decided which readings, ahruf, has to be canonized. And another man added more to it. And the list continues over and over again. And we get to the 1924 and we get another man who decided which one becomes the standard, most popular.
Muhammad again, but this time
exactly.
Ibn Ali Husseini al-Haddad, a completely different Muhammad who lived and worked there in Al-Azhar University.
Yeah, brother, thank you so much. Next time, I think we are going to talk about the possibility of having even more than 30.
There is more than 30. There's a lot more than 30. And this is something that I imagine most Muslims who are watching us have not heard yet. So come to the next episode. You might not like what we're going to say, but you need to listen to what we're now finding. And what I'm going to be introducing in the next episode comes from Dr. Shadi Hekmat Nasser, who has done his doctoral thesis. This is part of his doctoral thesis that he came out with in 2012.
Yeah. And these are scholars, by the way.
Harvard University.
They have no agenda whatsoever other than to share their findings. Their work is available for anyone. So we're not here saying, Dr. Shadi Hekmat Nasser is the one who's asking us to come here and talk about it. No, I mean, we're using his work that is available for everyone to use. And I hope he is okay with the fact that his work is available for anyone to analyze. This is peer review, no matter how you look at it. And at the same time, we are not sharing with you information that is not readily available for you. Anywhere from buying these different Qur'ans right here to basically checking every single thing that we mentioned to you. You have the sources available for you at the tip of your finger. So do your homework and make a decision to come to the real book, that's the Bible, and the real man, that's our Lord Jesus Christ. Until we meet again, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, CIRA International. Also, click on the bell so that you can receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or we go live. And I would like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking on the link right below, and that way you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you on how you can give to our channel. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.